Good morning. Hello, my name is Gary Parker, and I'm coming at you from Wyoming, sometimes known as the country preacher. I want to share a few thoughts with you. Actually, I've been meaning to share these for quite some time in regard to the Black Lives Matter movement. And I hope you'll find this helpful. Meant to do this back in, I don't know, early June. And I kept putting it off and putting it off, and things don't seem to be getting any better in many ways. But I want to give you a brief message of hope in regard to what's going on. And it doesn't just relate to Black Lives Matter, that's part of it. Did you know that there are different ways to view BLM? Out here in Wyoming, up until a few years ago, when you heard the phrase or letters BLM, you thought of Bureau of Land Management. That's a big deal out here. And as in other Western states out here. But in relation to the rest of the nation, BLM stands for Black Lives Matter. Now, Albert Mohler, a few weeks ago, shared a message. He was very articulate, very well stated, better than what I can do. But maybe some of you missed that. And actually what he said, I've been saying since 2014, when the Black Lives Matter organization began. The phrase Black Lives Matter is an absolute statement. It cannot be denied. It is a truth. Black lives do matter. All Black lives matter. Just as all lives matter. Okay? Now, when that statement first started being used, or those letters first started being used, Black Lives Matter, someone was quick to point out to me when I would say all lives matter that, well, they're not saying that all lives don't matter. They're saying that Black lives matter also. And that is a true statement as well. But the fact of the matter is, the second way to use BLM, the first way, an absolute statement, as I've already said. The second way, Black Lives Matter organization or network, is an organization that has hijacked the phrase BLM. The way they use it is in such a way that I have to question as to whether they really do believe Black Lives Matter. Why? Well, look at what's going on. Chicago, it's a war zone. Portland right now, it's a war zone. We saw what happened in Seattle, a few weeks ago. And Black Lives Matter organization is a part to some degree in all of these riots that are going on. But I've got to ask, do they really believe that Black lives matter? Because I do not hear them standing up for or against what's going on in Chicago, just as an example, and I can give many others. Black Lives Matter organization, go to their website, look at what they believe, look at what they stand for, or I should say, look at what they do not stand for. They are admittedly founded by some Marxist individuals. They don't believe in God. They advocate for the destruction of the family, as we read about in the Bible, with husband, wife, children. They advocate homosexuality. They advocate same-sex marriage. They advocate abortion. They are basically atheistic in their approach to things. And I don't think a lot of people who are going around saying they support that organization understand this, and that's why you need to go to the website. So real quick here, the phrase Black Lives Matter is a true statement. But the organization Black Lives Matter, there's nothing Christian about it that should not be supported by a Christian, in my opinion. But did you know there are others that use the phrase BLM as well that I think are worth noting? The third one is Blue Lives Matter. Blue lives do matter, in reference to the police, sheriff's department, law enforcement, they matter. They are important. Now, have I ever run into some law officers that I felt like were fine and out of step and off base? Yes, I have. Back when I was 19 years of age, I ran into such a man. I was down in Texas working door to door for Southwestern Publishing Company. And maybe you know somebody who's done that. Maybe you've had someone come to your house knocking on your door trying to sell you Bibles or children's books or some type of encyclopedia. Well, that's what I did. And I did that for a couple of summers, which helped me get through school. And at the age of 19, I was in this small town in Texas. And I'd gone in this town. I was going to be in this town all day long. Started first thing in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, knocked on a door. Lady answered. She invited me in. And I sold her some. I think it was a Bible, Nave's Topical Bible, Nave's Study Bible, one of the two. Anyway, as I was leaving, I said, by the way, you're the first house I've knocked on. Could you tell me, do I need a permit while I'm knocking doors in this town? And she said, well, you do need permission. And I said, who do I see? And she said, well, you need to see the town marshal. At this time of the day, he's at such and such house having coffee. And she told me where the house was. And so I got my bicycle, which had a flat tire, and I pushed it down to this house to where the marshal was. And sure enough, as I approached, he came out and met me on the street. And I put my hand out to introduce myself, to tell him, hey, my name's Gary Parker, and I'm selling Bibles for Southwestern Publishing Company. And I was told I need a permit or I need to get permission from you. His first words were, you got 20 minutes to get out of town. I said, why? He said, you've got 19 minutes to get out of town. I said, I get it. I'm going out of town. I said, but why? And he said, a few years ago, there were a couple of salesmen like you who came through and they robbed a house. And you now have 18 minutes to get out of town. I said, thank you. You have a good day. And I left. Now, that's a long story short. Second time I had a negative incident was in Alabama. I'm married. I've got children. We're heading back down to LA, Lower Alabama, the Mobile area, specifically Grand Bay. And I get pulled over. Now, I've already noticed there are a lot of sirens going around, coming and going on the interstate. And so I get pulled over. And as I look out my window through the mirror, I see a trooper with his gun drawn. And he comes up to my window, which I have rolled down. And I said, can I help you, sir? And he looks in, shines the light in, sees my children, gets on his radio and says, this is not the van. And he turns and goes. Now, those are just two incidents that I've had. I could recall some more. But those were not proper situations in which the law enforcement officers acted properly. They were wrong. But through the years, and I think nearly everyone will agree with me, Black lives matter, but so do blue lives matter. I was taught to try to respect everybody, no matter who they are. You should be respectful. You be kind. That's something I saw from my mom and my dad, and then my dad, who was a Baptist preacher. And I watched him interact with people outside of our family, not just our family, but outside of our family. He was always respectful of them. This should be the way it is in relation to law enforcement. These folks have a tough job. They have a very tough job. They have bad days. Are there bad cops? You better believe there are bad cops. But even a law enforcement officer will tell you that they dislike bad law enforcement officers worse than anybody. And so the funding that's being called for and all that stuff, and doing away with police departments in certain places, That's craziness. And it all goes back to this Black Lives Matter organization, which is Marxist. One more group, BLM, Babies' Lives Matter. We have aborted over 60 million babies in this country since Roe v. Wade was passed down by the Supreme Court. Our view of life in this nation is not what it should be. Black, white, Hispanic, whatever ethnic group, our view of life is not what it should be. But did you know that God's word speaks to this? Let me, real quick here, and I'll wrap this up. In the very beginning of God's word, all the way back to the book of Genesis, we are told that we are made in the image of God. Take a look at it. Man is made in the image of God. Genesis 1, 26, 27. Other passages as well. Anyone you come into contact with, they're made in the image of God. That should tell you right there how you should treat them. But let's go a little further. Jesus, when asked, I want to say Matthew 22, comes to mind. What's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but love the Lord with your all is what Jesus says. And then he says the second greatest commandment is like that one also, in that you are to love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. We have a hard time doing that these days. But that's the answer to all this. The Apostle Paul later on in Philippians chapter 2, he says, be kind to one another. Now he's writing to Christians there. He's not writing to non-Christians. But don't you think the principle is still the same even with non-Christians? Be kind to one another. In that same chapter, he says, think of others as better than yourself. The answer to dealing with all of the BLMs, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter organization, Babies' Lives Matter, the answer is giving our lives to God and putting him first. Something that this organization, Black Lives Matter organization, has no part of. If Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, there's no doubt in my mind he would repudiate this organization loudly, clearly, as would Ronald Reagan. And really anyone who says they are a child of God should also. I want you to think about these things. Share this with others. It's real simple, folks. Everyone you come into contact with is made in the image of God. Love God first. Love your fellow man. Let's be kind to one another. God bless you, and you have a great day.